to my first educational stream. Um, I will do a lot more of those, but that's the first one because I had some interesting talks with some people about the mythic items on AD carries, which one to choose in which situation. So I did a little sheet. Um, I'm not such a technic geek, so I hold it very simple and easy. But I want to go through those items, the champions, the value of it, and hope I can help some people to find the correct decision, to make the correct decision, and do the right choice. So first of all, I took the classic for mythic items for AD carries, Eclipse, Kraken, Gale Force, and Shield Bow with the different stats, and we're gonna directly compare each other. So basically, Eclipse is a niche item. You don't buy it too often on too many champions, but later on I'm gonna talk about it. The basic stats are just fine with 60-80, the early lethality and the Omnivamp, and armor penetration, movement speed for every um, done item. Oh, hi Sophia. Um, Compared to this, the Kraken Slayer, you have the little bit more AD, flat AD. You get the attack speed, the highest of all of those. You get the crit damage, and you have a great scaling with 10% attack speed. And the Gale Force with basic 60 AD, attack speed, crit as well. The Shield Bow with the lowest stats compared. So 50 AD, 20 attack speed, 20 crit, and the lifesteal. Also with a little scaling of 580 and 50 HP. So if you compare all of those, we're gonna start with the Eclipse. I mean, the first one is you have the Omnivamp, so you get a lot of sustain early on after you got the item. The advantage is that you don't have to buy an early penetration item. So for example, Lord Dominic's, because Eclipse itself scales so great that you get the armor penetration out of the item itself. So all in all, the scaling is pretty insane. The consequence, the contra, is that you have no flat attack speed. So later on, gonna explain how it works on the champions and what it makes a good item or a bad item. You have no flat crit, and it's not a gap closer at all. So I mean, it's still a niche mythic item. Um, Kraken Slayer, probably the highest damage mythic item right here, has insanely basic stats. It has the highest AD and the highest attack speed. It's super great against tanks. Also in the current meta, where a lot of people play, what is it called, Heartsteel, and get very tanky really soon. You can do shit tons of damage just because of the passive with the 2 damage. And in longer fight situations, you can simply proc the third auto attack with the 2 damage more often. So the pure damage output with Kraken Slayer is absolute insane. The true damage itself doesn't really matter how many resistances your enemy has, because you just melt them anyway. And the scaling is also super great, exceptionally for attack speed heavy AD carries, just because you're getting 10% attack speed with every done item. The issue with Kraken Slayer is that it's very static, so you have no gap closer at all. and you have no survivability because you're not getting lifesteal or omnivamp. And it's bad in skirmishes. In short fights, you're not doing too much. Most of the times, you might be able to do like 9 attacks, I would say, in small fights. So in best case, you're gonna proc your passive with the 2 damage 3 times. Next to it, Gale Force. I mean, might be the most favored mythic item of all. The basic stats are just fine. It's not too shabby. You get an extra gap closer, so I'm gonna talk later on about situational, how you can profit about it. You have a super good execute potential because your dash damage goes onto the lowest health target. So you can just dash forward to do 1 or 2 more auto attacks to finish your target. And well, by nature you have burst damage with your dash. The problem with Gale Force is that the cooldown of the item itself is super high, so the value of the active isn't that great at all, at least in team fights. And the scaling isn't too bad, too good either, because movement speed is fine. It's also great for an AD carry to reposition yourself, but normally you want to do as much damage as possible in the team fight, and the movement speed might help you to do 1 or 2 more auto attacks if you run away from your target, but it's not pure damage itself. Also against tanks in the current meta, it isn't that great at all because it's just a little bit burst damage, but to be honest, the burst damage in the most cases wouldn't execute your tank target. It's just more for squishy ones or running away. Shield Bow has early sustain with the lifesteal. It's great for laning and longer team fights to get some life back during the fight. The survivability is also great if it's getting procced and you're getting your shield. You're also getting some bonus AD. But to be honest, at the moment your sheep bow gets procced, in most of the times you're just dying. During the laning phase, I like the item just for the all-in potential, because if you're dropping your enemy for half-life, you can still keep trying to run them down. If your shield gets popped, you're like even with shield and your health to the low life target. But the issue with shield bow, exceptionally for the laning phase, is that the basic stats are just horrible. I mean, if you compare it to Kraken or even Gale Force, there's a difference of 10, 15, 80. That's a huge deal if you're trying to auto your enemy or you're poking your enemy with autos. You have no gap closer like Gale Force. Like I said already, the damage is pretty low. You have no burst potential like Gale Force, and you're not doing any extra damage to tanks. Even the lifesteal to tanks is absolute horrible. If your enemy has shit tons of armor and you're not doing damage at all, the health you're getting back from your shield bow and the lifesteal is just garbage. So all in all, you can think about Eclipse is just a niche item for some champions I'll talk about soon. Kraken and Gale Force are probably the most common mythic items for AD carry. And I think the damage value of Kraken Slayer is super great. But in the situations you're gonna buy Kraken Slayer is first, if you're pretty much the only damage source in your team, and in best case you have also a great frontline that that gives you the option to stay behind and do as much damage as possible. So in this case, you're gonna buy definitely Kraken Slayer, also on champions that have the option to, or that they are based on attack speed. So you're gonna proc your true damage pretty often. And I'd also say if you're behind and you in laning phase and you're getting stomped and bombed out of the lane and start the lane with like 0-3 or even worse, then I would also recommend to buy Kraken Slayer, because at this point your only job is it to do in team fights or skirmishes as much damage as possible, and the value of Kraken Slayer is just the best in this case. Um, Gale Force is probably the most versatile mythic item, because the value it gives you is just uncomparable to the other ones. So I'd say you could probably buy Gale Force on every champion. So the reasoning for this, you get the most obvious one with the dash. You get yeah, I would say it's something like a second flash with a lower cooldown. Sure, you can't flash or dash over the wall, something like that, but um, the gap closer is pretty insane, exceptionally for AD carries that don't have an own gap closer at all. So you get a lot of mobility out of it, and it also gives you the option to run down enemy AD carries in your lane that don't have a gap closer on their own. So, for example, your most obvious one who's nearly 100% buying Gale Force is Jin. He has no own gap closer, but Gale Force gives him the opportunity to um, chase down, for example, an Lucian who dashes away with his eye, and you're going Gale Force into him to get the execute damage on. So Gale Force is pretty much an item you can nearly always buy on your AD carry, and it's not bad at all. Shield Bow is a very specific mythic item. I think you can just buy on not that many champions, because the basic stats um, are just shit. So if you're playing a game with a lot of assassins, or you play an AD carry with super short range and have to all in at some point, then Shield Bow might be your item to go, your mythic to go. But yeah, for me, it's probably one of the worst, or not even the worst, of those four mythic items you can buy as an AD carry, because it's your job to deal damage. Sure, you can argue if you're not surviving, you can't deal damage. So that's why I said if you're playing against a lot of assassins or bruisers that are able to get close to you, then Shilpo might be a viable option. But in the most cases, um, even there, Gale Force is the better choice, just for to to um, to get away from bruisers that might charge you directly. So if I take um, champion by champion, we're gonna start with Aphelios. And Aphelios, I didn't play him too much, to be honest, but I think the Aphelios could probably buy everything except for Eclipse. The survivability for him with Shield Bow is super great, even also the gap closer. Or if you go for the long-term damage on Aphelios, Kraken might be a viable option as well. Um, but I think I'm not sure about it. The most people just would go for the Gale Force in this case. Ash doesn't can't just can't buy Eclipse. It doesn't work in any way. Kraken is a super nice idea for Ash. I like it because you get the slow of your auto attacks, even the bigger slow on your Q, and you can auto reset with Q. So the proc or the option to proc your Kraken with like 6 auto attacks pretty fast is super simple and provides a lot of damage. I'd say even here you can play a Gale Force. It might sound stupid, but I think even there, if you because Ash has no gap closer on her own, you can use the Gale Force to um, just survive a little bit longer or reposition yourself. Shield Bow on Ash is super great because most of the people play on hit Ash, and the Shield Bow in combination with the Hurricane gives you the option to pretty much get your full health back after you hit one wave. Caitlyn, I mean, there are some. There might be a possibility to play Eclipse with Caitlyn if you go for a lethality build, but we are not seeing that too often. And so yeah, but I put it in here. Kraken is super great on Caitlyn. I like it. I play Caitlyn a lot, and even if it might be not the optimal way if you compare it to professional players, I press the attack on Caitlyn, and if I have the ability to stomp my lane or even need to do as much damage as possible with some tanky players in my team, and I'm like the only damage source. You have press the attack, you have the Kraken Slayer proc, and you have her headshot. So I wouldn't say every auto, but nearly every auto attack of her does proc one of her bonus damage abilities in this case. So either you're gonna get your headshot, you proc the Kraken true damage bonus, or you um, got the extra damage for of press the attack. So the damage output of a Kraken Caitlyn is just insanely high. And the other option, what like I said, you can nearly buy, you can nearly always buy, is Gale Force. Even on Caitlyn, it's super strong. Um, a combination I like to do after I got my Gale Force, exceptionally for, even if you're playing against a squishy AD carry with high damage, you can just Gale Force, you do an auto attack, you Gale Force into him, do your net shot, Q, and do through your net shot, you're getting your headshot and proc. Because of the slow of your net shot, you can just proc your third press the attack proc. So the burst damage with Caitlyn in a case of Gale Force is super great. Shield Bow isn't that viable at all. I think it's great for survivability in laning phase and against assassins, but I wouldn't recommend it in any case, to be honest. I put in Corki here, but to be honest, I don't know if Corki is really an option as an AD carry. Like always, I'd say Gale Force is also playable for Corki, but the most people who play Corki, even in mid, most of the time is gonna play Shield Bow. Yeah, I think it's just a survivability thing. And if you're going in with your package, you have your shield just to survive the burst damage if you're too far into the enemies. Yes. And the next one, Draven. I'd recommend on Draven the early shield bow. to be honest. I mean, Eclipse is also a super great item on him because you're getting the early lethality and you scale great with the armor penetration. But the value of Draven with an early shield bow and a second item in Bloodthirster is so fucking much sustain that you're gonna proc an insane amount of lifesteal with your Q damage, and you can pretty much all in a lot of time, even while mispositioning. Your lifesteal is so great that you're able to get a lot of survivability. Eclipse might be also an option, like I said, with the scaling. And to be honest, even Gale Force is here an opportunity. You have the movement speed with your W, but the execute damage with Gale Force and empowered Q of Draven, I see there's an option. As well, I mean, obviously he's an AD carry, but as well is a special one, and he doesn't fit in the normal mythic items at all. I mean, I played as well with Eclipse, and I think it's not the worst item on him because the basic stats are pretty good. The armor penetration isn't bad either, but the early Omnivamp and the ability to get the bonus damage and movement speed out of your Q auto attack, Q, E, W, whatever, is pretty high. So I think Eclipse is a viable option for Ezreal. But in most games, you're gonna see a Divine Thunderer or Trinity Force. I mean, for obvious reasons, you're gonna proc um, the Sheen damage with your Q. But even there, I think a build on Ezreal with Eclipse, um, yeah, I mean, the scaling is great, but the early damage of Divine Thunder and Trinity 4, I think can't be overlooked. Um, in rare scenarios, you're gonna see an Ezreal with Iceborne Gauntlet. It gives a lot of tankiness, the option to get some slow into the enemy team, but I think the pure damage output is much higher with the Divine Thunder and Trinity Force. Jhin, I mean, I don't know why I missed this one. If you play a lethality Jhin, you're gonna go for Eclipse for sure. Scaling is great. You have earlier penetration. Maybe you go for um, early pen items as well. So Eclipse might fit here, but in the most cases, you're just going for the Gale Force and empowered. I mean, your dash with the burst damage of your fourth attack and a Q is many times your chance to execute a Half-Life AD carry even while laning. My favorite champion, Jinx. Eclipse isn't an option at all. Shield Bow might be an option in really, really rare scenarios where there's absolutely no chance for you to survive shit tons of assassins or people that just straight charge you. So, but in the normal case, you're going for Kraken Slayer or Gale Force. I prefer Kraken on her just because normally you're going to play her with lethal tempo, and the amount of times with her attack speed stacking Q damage of the Gatling gun, you're gonna proc Kraken Slayer like all fucking time. So even in smaller skirmishes that don't take too long, um, Jinx on Kraken Slayer, the damage output is just ridiculous. If you're super far ahead in your lane, I think Gale Force is also a great item because your item wise normally outscale your enemy in this case anyway if you're like 3-0. and you go for the early Gale Force, it gives you the chance to dash into him, stack your Gatling gun attack speed, switch up to the rocket launcher, proc your lethal tempo, and in many cases, your lane opponents just die of the burst damage and the amount of auto attacks you're getting out. Kaiser, I mean, most people play press the attack, I think. At least I play press the attack. And Kaiser is heavily scaling into the mid and late game, so the advantage with the scaling of Kraken you're getting with the attack speed, and I think it's just an obvious item pick. But like in many cases, even Gale Force, I could imagine is possible because the gap closer just helps in many cases. Kalista is not a niche pick at all, I think. In those days, Kalista is getting played many times. The obvious pick might be Shield Bow just for the survivability, and you're normally going for the Hurricane, so you're getting shit tons of life back with the Shield Bow and Hurricane if you're hitting a wave. Kraken Slayer, I think, is also a viable option because you're trying to hit as many spears into your target to burst them down with your eye. I think most people gonna play for Shield Bow because you're even in super close range and you just want to survive at this point. The next thing also with Kog'Maw, same thing. You have no gap closer, but as Kog'Maw you're trying to get as most attack speed as possible to get most value out of your W. So you're trying to do as many hits as possible. In this case, Kraken Slayer scales with the attack speed pretty well. You get a shit tons of true damage out. And also in this case, if you're afraid of the survivability, an early shield bow might be not the worst option. Even if you combine it with the Blade of the Rune King, you get a lot of value of the lifesteal and might sustain a little bit longer. Lucian has two options, in my opinion. I play him a lot, and Lucian has the advantage that his dash is basically available pretty often. So you can get a shit ton of value out of the Kraken Slayer. You can proc it like even in small fights 3 or 4 times just because of a double shot. And Kraken is in this case a great item. But on the other hand, Gale Force in combination with your dash is so much mobility that most of the AD carries in the straight 2v2 just collapse by your man by your option just to chase them down. At least, I mean, there's nothing they can do pretty much. Misfortune is an interesting pick, to be honest, because I think she's pretty dominant, even in lane, but in team fights as well. I'd say Eclipse is a great item on her if you go for the early penetration and the scaling. Most people those days might play Kraken Slayer just because of her W attack speed bonus and the amount of true damage you can provide in team fights. Even in this case, I think Gale Force is also a viable option because Misfortune just has her movement speed through W and has no great gap closer at all. And it might help in several occasions if you're trying to position yourself for a great ultimate. So even here, Gale Force might be not the worst item to pick. Next one, Samira, my all-time banned champion. I think she's giga busted, but that doesn't matter in this video at all. I think the only option Samira has really is to go for the shield bomb. Her range is super bad, and she has to go close like always. If she is dealing melee damage or range damage, doesn't really matter. The shield bow gives her the survivability, the sustain while laning. And with her all in and her ultimate, you try just to survive as long as possible because you're straight into the whole enemy team. And in this case, there's no other viable option than shield bow, in my opinion. So it's a pretty set done item. We don't see Senna that often those days in um, normal games, solo queue, flex queue, because she mostly got played as a support. Um, Even if you're gonna pick Samira as an AD carry, I think the only viable option here is Kraken, because what you want to do as Senna is to scale as much as possible into the late game with your picked up souls, and to scale you put normally an item like Kraken to help you scale into the mid and late game. So even in this case, you're just trying to do as much damage as possible and scale in the late game. So Kraken is here the obvious option. Severe, I'd also say that Gale Force is an option as well. Severe is a pick also like Senna, you're just trying to survive as long as possible, scale into the late game. So you're pretty much a support for your team and provide some movement speed with your ultimate, while you're on your own, have a lot of wave clear. Um, so it's very easy to clear the waves, just stay in lane. Your killing potential in the early isn't that great, I would say. At the point you're getting your Kraken, you can auto reset with your W. So you might get early procs with the Kraken Slayer, and with the correct support, this might be enough damage to dominate your lane. But anyway, in the normal scenario, you're just trying to wave clear, get as much farm as possible, scale into the late game, and there's Kraken the best option. Even there, I'd say Gale Force might be an opportunity for you to get the early burst damage to dominate your lane or just to survive. Tristana, I'd say like the same. Tristana just wants to scale into the late game, get more range with her level ups. So Kraken Slayer in the later stage of the game with shit tons of attack speed, and the option to melt tanks down is the obvious pick. Even there, Gale Force might be another option if you're hitting your bomb onto a target, get some auto attacks off, but you need like one or two more to get the max value of your bomb. Then Gale Force might give you the opportunity to get your autos off, get a great trade on your enemy target, and right after, even if you don't kill the target, you can right jump out of the W. So I think Gale Force might even on Tristana a viable option. Twitch, a dominating pick in low elo, my opinion. I mean, in most cases, you're just trying to scale, get 2 or 3 items, and melt down the enemy team with much damage as possible and high attack speed out of your stealth and long range with your spray and pray, pray and spray and pray. And in this case, Kraken is the obvious pick. You're getting even more attack speed. You have shit tons of true damage procs. So That's one option. The other one is you're going for sheep bow, the early sustain. You can go stealth on roamings on the lane and have the survivability with the lifesteal just not to get bursted down instantly. Gale Force for the obvious reasons. You get more procs on your passive. Eventually, you have a gap closer, but I think Kraken Slayer is here the most recommended item. Varus, also huge pickup those days. Most of the people play him, I'd say, on lethality. So in this case, Eclipse is the obvious pickup. I mean, you get the early armor penetration, lethality, your scaling into the mid and late game is even better. So you're super strong with your procs of your W, the early lethality and armor penetration to also kill tanks. If you're playing on hit Varus, I think Kraken might be another great option, but I think in most cases you're just going for the Eclipse. Vayne is also super close range, like Samira, and might need early survivability, sustain with lifesteal or an extra shield. So shield bow is here an obvious pickup. On the other hand, Vayne provides a lot of damage with her true damage on her W and also could do even more true damage with the Kraken Slayer. So a lot of people play Shield Bow. I'd say that Kraken Slayer is the better scaling option for Vayne into the late game. But I think it's a situational item. If you have the ability with a great frontline to survive even longer and get your autos off, Kraken might be the better option here. Xayah, classic AD carry for Kraken and Gale Force. I mean, Gale Force for obvious reasons with the gap close is great. Kraken Slayer for the bonus attacks she is getting off her W gives you the opportunity to proc the true damage Kraken proc pretty often. So I'd say Kraken is the normal pickup. Zeri is like Aphelios. I didn't play her too much, to be honest. And I see right now that I even missed Neela because I didn't play her either. Zeri, I'd say, also tries to scale into the late game. Has a horrible win ratio currently, so I don't think there are so many Zeri players at all. But I'd say the close range, like Samira and Vayne as well, is might give her a viable option to buy the shoe ball first to get her survivability and sustain a little bit. The Kraken Slayer for the also the late game scaling. The last one, Neela, I have no fucking clue to be honest. I'd say most people play shield bow, no? Maybe Kraken? I don't know at all to be honest. Um, I haven't seen her too much and didn't play her even once. So I can't say too much about her to be honest. This would be just dump. So that's my list. I'm gonna upload this one and my ideas about the items and the value of the different ones, even on the specific champions. I'd upload this on YouTube and you'd see it on my Twitch stream as well, at least for some days. I think it's a great like a beginner guide, and you don't have to forget it's not a recommendation for high challenger, master, grandmaster, elo. It's pretty much a recommendation of mine for the lower elos up to diamond, I'd say. And it might also be a great beginner guide for people starting to play ADC and don't know which mythic to pick up. So I hope you enjoy it. You can follow me on my Twitch, YouTube, and even share your opinions. If you can comment down below or just ask me in my stream. And I hope it helped you. So see ya next video. Bye bye.